Aural Skills curriculum of singing and dictation poses enormous complications for some students, especially those who are deaf or hard of hearing. A course designed to train and evaluate aural perception of normal hearing students might appear fundamentally incongruous for the deaf population. Whereas instructors typically mitigate learning barriers through collaboration with an accommodative services office, the essential content of Aural Skills courses conflicts with a diagnosed limitation and makes that resource insufficient. This paper proposes ways in which instructors might reconceive instructional strategies to provide deaf students with more access to the Aural Skills curriculum. By pairing deaf scholarship with music theory and vocal pedagogy, I expand existing methods with possible frameworks. These recommendations stem from my experience teaching a deaf student whom I will call JD. Anonymity restricts providing student-specific details. His prior unsuccessful efforts with other instructors necessitated curricular reconsideration. I outline the various approaches we implemented and comment on their success. The multifaceted nature of being deaf presents a wide range of issues for consideration. Instructors must exceed basic knowledge of aural limitations and examine topics of deaf culture to be truly effective. Terminology brought unexpected complexities. For example, the semantic difference between the terms disabled and impaired helped me to reconsider curricular expectations. I also began to consider how factors beyond hearing impairment also impact success. Barriers could include differences in communication, short-term memory, and inadequate metacognition. A multitude of concerns aside from hearing should inform an instructor's decisions in constructing accommodations or curricular goals. Assistive technologies play a large role in much deaf instruction, typically in the form of either a hearing aid or cochlear implant. Scholarship demonstrates the utility of these devices, which depend on an individual's hearing needs and medical counsel. With regard to music, cochlear implants do not provide an adequate experience for musical training. Although some research indicates that a bilateral approach may benefit speech recognition, it does not significantly improve music perception. Studies citing the benefits of cochlear implants for music often have inadequate goals for practicing musicians. Consequently, hearing aids typically remain the best option. Additional topics also warrant consideration to adequately prepare instructors. Audiograms, types of hearing loss, and student demographics all factor into developing a constructive pedagogical approach. Scholarship stresses the importance of specific personal factors as predictors for deaf student persistence. Unfortunately, discussions outlining predictors of academic success often ignore the role of institutional readiness and their ability to provide support. Regardless of the intricacies which should inform deaf pedagogy, communication between instructor and student remains paramount. Instructors should establish a rapport before addressing curricular matters. Age at hearing impairment onset impacts vocal ability. Prior experience in postlingual deafness supports speech lacking clear feedback. However, prelingual deafness precludes this foundation. Although prelingually deaf children regularly sing, the lack of feedback between hearing and vocalization leads to poor self-monitoring. After years of singing without correction to build connections, instructors may need to help a student find their voice. Since singing presented a considerable challenge for JD, I provided individual instruction. Evaluating phonation skills was essential to determine potential concerns. Speech issues which could impede singing were immediately apparent. He directed his lips towards the better functioning ear, an adjustment that affects intonation. The properties of his speaking voice were a greater concern. Prior scholarship has recognized the tense or breathy character of deaf voices, problems regulating breath, and excessive nasal resonance. JD demonstrated a considerable amount of hyperfunctional phonation, the demanding too much of the larynx, coupled with improper subglottic pressure, the air pressure just below the vocal folds. These issues can cause medical conditions, including hoarseness, laryngitis, contact ulcers, and vocal nodules. Preventing these issues in singing was essential to avoid increased risk of vocal damage. Vocal pedagogy recommends various corrective measures. Lip trills with glissandos relax the larynx, correct breath support, and address the limited range typical of deaf voices. However, lip trills produce vibration that interferes with assistive hearing devices. Turning off devices during warm-ups avoids this issue. Reinforcing healthy technique supersedes the need for intonation. To focus on specific pitches, back vowels such as ah, o, and oo maintain a relaxed larynx. Yet some deaf speakers neutralize vowels. Distorting vowel shape decreases intonation and undermines the tension-relieving benefits. Instructors should not expect immediate results from vocal exercises. Students must overcome years of muscular tension and habitual phonation. Regardless of efforts to promote vocal health, JD could not match pitch consistently. I hypothesized that this impairment undermined vocal resonance and prevented connections between phonation and perception. Vocal perception relies on a sensor-motor processing loop of feed-forward intention and feedback information. However, increasing an individual's perception of their voice presents challenges. Introducing any method of variable feedback would not consistently enhance the singing experience to develop pitch matching skills. My goal remained constant feedback from bone conduction and airborne signals. Semi-occluded vocal exercises solved our dilemma, which involved singing through a firm, reusable straw. Focusing the voice through narrowed lips maintains a neutral larynx and promotes healthy air pressure across the vocal folds. Moreover, a straw transfers vocal tract power to the lips, increasing vibrations by the nostrils, teeth, and hard palate. Transferring some vocal resonance to a position further away from the vocal tract supplemented JD's ability to feel vocal vibration and provided a second source of constant feedback. Curious pitch errors remained in JD's singing. One excerpt would be accurate, yet another would be incomprehensible. His audiogram revealed a connection with his voice. The report spans 250 to 8,000 hertz, or roughly B3 to B8. Although this data informed my dictation assignments, I overlooked its connection to JD's voice. I tested hearing accuracy below B3 and concluded that he could sing as low as G3 with reliable accuracy. This limitation eliminated approximately 1 octave from the male's lower register. Thus, we transposed material to keys suitable to his vocal and audible range. Emphasizing singing for a deaf individual may seem odd. Singing benefits musicianship for normal hearing musicians. Yet concerns arise regarding the extent a curriculum of vocalizing disables hearing impaired students. Although we cannot expect deaf individuals to reach proficiencies of normal hearing musicians, instructors disservice students by exempting engagement. Scholarship demonstrates that hearing impairment does not preclude singing ability. Course goal design should comprise instructor pedagogy, institutional expectations, and student potential. Dictation accommodations were not pressing for JD. Rhythm and meter posed no issue, and pitch errors were negligible. However, his grades gradually declined, and I realized that he dictated less what he heard and more what seemed logical. Musical expectations transformed his dictation into fairly accurate assumptions. Consequently, I explored alternate testing methods. Presenting material in both acoustic and MIDI forms increases clarity by offering auxiliary information and situational control, respectively. Although bone conduction or noise-canceling headphones may help, they do not aid cochlear damage reliably and can cause discomfort with hearing devices. Vibrotactile equipment provides auxiliary perception and enhances the listening experience, but is unreliable for pitch acuity. Two factors of harmonic dictation were problematic: low pitch register and auditory masking. Dictating bass lines brought difficulty due to his inconsistent ability differentiating pitches below G3. Occasionally, pitches were simply absent because he could not hear specific frequencies. Other times, it seemed as if his ear would project bass pitches, typically when the chord was inverted. The innate complexity of harmonic listening further complicated this issue. Having pitches sound in close proximity masked discrete components, forming a mass of indeterminable sound. In a similar manner to our work exploring singing techniques, I began to consider possible accommodations and essential curricular goals. A coaching approach worked best to support dictation exercises. Rather than presenting a passage the predetermined number of times punctuated with silence, a dialogue about his observations followed each listening. This conversation helped me determine what was perceivable and adjust subsequent playing to assist his listening. 3 musical alterations generally proved most effective: adjusting dynamics, shifting register, and revoicing chords. When the soprano or bass was largely correct, increasing the dynamic of one part provided necessary aid to make salient a missing or incorrect note. If most of the bass was problematic, moving the right hand an octave higher occasionally reduced auditory masking. Similarly, moving both hands up an octave or transposing to a different key situated the material in a more perceivable range. Revoicing chords was useful after JD sketched out initial material. Since his ability to hear gradually decreased between C5 and C6, he occasionally dictated an inner voice when the soprano was less perceptible. After determining which voice overshadowed the soprano, I removed it to redirect his listening. Since adjusting features of dictation brought moderate success, I sought additional ways to augment his listening. A solution came from singing while listening to a passage. This approach seemed counterintuitive at first, since singing while listening adds complexity and undermines development of musical memory. On the contrary, singing often made listening easier. By producing sound during dictation, he was more sensitive to contour and detected when his answer clashed with the sounding harmony. Priming a dictation with singing exercises also increased his perception. A dictation with a relatively high soprano was often more accurate if he vocalized in that register. Since discerning half-step alterations often proved imprecise, singing a chromatic scale or segments of one helped him identify secondary chords when they appeared. Modified pedagogical techniques and individual instruction greatly facilitated JD's abilities in Aural Skills 1. However, further instructional adjustments seemed both suitable and necessary for the following term. Because my curriculum integrates aural skills and theory within one class, attending class would help JD connect an oral and theoretical domains and prevent being isolated from other students. Discussing course goals and expectations with JD helped me conceive a hybrid course format of individual and co-enrolled instruction for Aural Skills 2. JD agreed to attend class meetings primarily for theory instruction, which allowed him to participate in conversations and group work assignments. He also engaged with Aural Skills activities to the extent he felt comfortable. Reserving a seat close to the piano assisted his hearing. Because ungraded dictation exercises supplemented lecture material, he completed these activities in a mainstream setting without fear of penalty. However, I continued to administer graded dictation work separately by appointment to maintain the previous coaching format. In-class singing activities were slightly less engaging. JD was not required to sing individually during class, but often hummed along. Reviewing singing and dictation material from class during individual meetings ensured that JD had opportunities to engage with the material at his own pace. Furthermore, I excused JD from lectures exclusively devoted to aural skills and scheduled individual meetings instead to better utilize his time. This format encouraged personal growth and engagement with the course material, but provided support when necessary. Although JD passed Aural Skills 2 with a strong aptitude, Aural Skills 3 and 4 presented issues. These courses were taught by other instructors, which required JD to adapt to new expectations. Fortunately, colleagues were receptive to my concern and agreed to collaborate on future accommodations. Our solution replicated much of my prior format. JD attended class, participated within his level of comfort, and met regularly with me for supplemental instruction. Colleagues shared course materials and conveyed curricular goals to help me understand their objectives. In addition to instructing, I occasionally served as his advocate. Meeting the proficiencies of other instructors remained paramount. However, I suggested practical modifications to assign material when absolutely necessary. This approach supported stronger communication between instructors and removed potential anxieties of student self-advocacy. Successful deaf musicians appear prior to the 21st century. Narratives often approach their deafness in relation to their career, either as tragic fate or romanticized obstacle to be overcome. However, these composers differ from deaf students, since their impairment typically arose post-musical training. Contemporary musicians who develop their musical ability concurrently with hearing loss form a more suitable model. Their experiences, both positive and negative, provide crucial insight into the realities of being a deaf musician. Evelyn Glennie stands out as an exemplar, being deaf from an early age. She uses her entire body as a listening device to augment pitch acuity. Similarly, the vocalist Mandy Harvey discerns pulse and timbre through her body. Singing without shoes allows her to feel vibrations better through the floor. The deaf rock band, Beethoven's Nightmare, uses visual communication and speaker placement to optimize their perception when performing. These atypical methods of perceiving music are no less valid than normal hearing musicians, yet traditional methods of instruction could undermine evaluation of their ability. Accounts by deaf musicians provide an indispensable resource to better appreciate their experiences. Aspects such as satisfaction, background, self-efficacy, social challenges, interactive challenges, and music-making strategies warrant consideration. The wide range of listening styles deaf musicians employ is arguably most interesting. Some ignore auditory feedback, knowing that their aural perception is inaccurate. Others rely occasionally on their hearing in tandem with other senses. These contemporary models benefit students by revealing alternate ways of musical engagement. Moreover, they help instructors reconceive their restricted notions of musicianship. The diverse listening approaches of deaf musicians help expose disabling expectations in the Aural Skills curriculum. Acknowledging methods of musical perception beyond strictly aural experience is an important next step for pedagogy. For example, Joseph Strauss proposes 3 forms of hearing music: prodigious, normal, and disablest. Systematically developing normal hearing in the classroom in a process of acculturation eventually culminates in prodigious hearing, orally identifying forms, hierarchies, etc. If a normal hearing aligns with a normally embodied person's musical experience, a disablest hearing aims to recognize a broader range of hearing. By legitimizing multisensory experiences such as visual and tactile information, instructors can increase access to course content. Additionally, validating alternative forms of aural perception can decrease negative stigmas about deafness. My methods are not a solution for every student with hearing loss. Rather, they should serve as a guide and encourage alternative accommodative pedagogies. Diagnosing factors which impede success require a significant personal investment by both instructor and student. For that reason, it's important to acknowledge JD's patience and dedication throughout this experience. I am deeply grateful to him for the insight he provided about deafness and deaf culture. Despite various challenges and frustrations entailed in adapting this curriculum, our efforts yielded exceptional results. JD achieved proficiency beyond my expectations, and I am confident in his abilities as he works towards his future career goals. Thank you.